and welcome to Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship of North Carolina's live stream event for April 1st. No kid, we're not kidding, it's April 1st, 2021. My name is Susan Hunter, and I am the chairperson and acting program coordinator for SFF. Do you know who SFF is? Well, it's our community. It is you who has decided to show up to learn more in order to advance yourself on your spiritual path. And we are glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Also, Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship of North Carolina it's also a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization that has met in person once a month to sponsor a speaker since 1973 until last year. And then in August, we moved forward with the Zoom platform, which has allowed us to have a geographically wider audience. So I want to especially say hello and welcome to people who may be joining us for the first time, and we're really glad you found us. Hope you come back. We are very active on social media, so check out our YouTube, Meetup, Facebook, and Instagram pages. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe. It really does help us, especially if you share on your Facebook our upcoming events. We really appreciate that support. If you want to receive our e-flyer to remind you of our events, you can sign up for that on our website, which is spiritual-frontiers.com. It is my pleasure to introduce Joseph Pio Asterita. So welcome and thank you, Joseph, for coming to speak to Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship tonight. We appreciate you taking this time to do it. So Joseph has a very interesting story, life story. But Joseph started working with earth energy grids 21 years ago while studying Native American spirituality in the state of New York. He moved to North Carolina in 2003 and continued his efforts to discover points that formed energy lines, or ley lines. And the word ley is spelled L-E-Y, and he'll explain why in a few minutes. So when negative events occur on the earth, these energy ley lines are blocked from flowing. With other light workers, Joseph formed an energy team and started using multiple spiritual practices to unblock these lines. He has studied intensively to learn these skills. And Joseph has traveled to Egypt, Scotland, Central and South America, as well as the US, discovering ley lines and clearing energies. Joseph is a metal fabrication artist and an energy healer with multiple certifications. He studied sacred geometry and the powers that it contains. And I do want to say that Joseph and I, maybe 18 years ago, took a sacred geometry class at a person's house in Durham, and it was amazing. And it caught him. I mean, he jumped right on it. He's been doing it ever since, and probably before that. But it's an amazing subject that we don't hear about very often. So he has a lot of good information to give you tonight. But also, if there's enough interest, he may have one. He may have a workshop this summer. But we have to have enough interest. We will post his email in the chat box if you want to write it down, or go to SFF website to see his information under the archive events. But his email is metalgeometricart@gmail.com. So Joseph, it's all yours.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. And welcome everybody. I'm looking forward to sharing with you these amazing 20 plus years of experiences I had working with earth energies and sacred geometry. I think all of you can share along the way that during your life, you have had a real good mentor, a famous person to help you along the way. And I like to start our talk here with in memoriam to one of my first teachers, Reverend Bill Bueller, and that screen's coming up now. Bill was my teacher back in the early part of the century, about 2006, 2007. And really took me under his wings to get me into the whole idea of sacred geometry and how it interfaced it with the elemental kingdom and with energy grids. But before that, Bill is a retired commander in the US Navy. And he's a decorated naval hero during the Vietnam War. And he was a great and spirited and very knowledgeable teacher on earth energy, as well as the elemental kingdom and the ascension. And this is in memory of him. He passed over a while back. But going forward, I think he's somewhere behind me, helping me out. So let's get into this. Okay, earth energies of the earth. They are interdimensional vibrations from Gaia, the living earth, Mother Earth, that are her aura and energy fields. They are made up of energy points, lines, vortices, and possibly other phenomenal expressions. And I say other because we're discovering more and more as we go along in exploring earth energies. Now, we talked about ley lines and as part of the title of this, and they are part of the earth energy system. So let's talk about them. An interdimensional energy line or flow between two or more prominent energy sources. And we have slides coming up that will show that. They also can be considered a straight alignment of natural landmarks, human structures, human activities, or a combination of these. So now we see the human race becoming part of the ley line or energy structure that is part of Gaia, part of the earth energy system. We can either influence it positively or negatively, and we'll see how that happens. Now, Wikipedia has a definition of ley lines that I like to refer to you because they're talking about straight alignments drawn between various historic structures, which is true, and prominent landmarks. They, however, call it a pseudoscientific belief that apparent alignments of landmarks are not accidental and have spiritual significance. Now, we all know pseudoscience, to a degree, is false science. Their initial premise is based on, and they mean the science field, archaeology specifically, that a lot of the structures and landmarks that are on a ley line were put up at different times, maybe hundreds, if not thousands of years apart. So how could there be a communication between these people, these races, if they never knew each other existed? However, if they are energy grids or energy lines, people are drawn to them, and that's how they manage to set up buildings, etc., temples, churches, and all sorts of spiritual places for them, important places, on a particular sort of line. And we will get into this on where you are right now in the triangle and the triad, because you are at the, we are at the intersection of three major ley lines that all form right around the Raleigh, Chapel Hill, and Durham area, as well into the triad of Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and High Point. So I want to refer you to this chart here on acupuncture meridians. Now, this is kind of like similar to what goes on the Earth. While the Earth has got these meridians or ley lines and grid systems that run around it, so does the human body. As you can see here in this slide, these ley line, these acupuncture meridians would be parallel what's on a human body to what's on the Earth. So if we have them, the Earths have them. It's really the other way around. The Earth has them and we have them since we've come from the Earth. These are spiritual energies, okay? So in this particular slide here that I made up, you'll notice down here that Gaia, and I've got this inclusive line, it is part of the first four dimensions. This is the different particular planes of consciousness. I set it up like a building, and over here we have the different dimensions that are kind of parallel to this. This is not really an exact science of relating dimensions to mental planes or upper astral plane or what have you. But I was told through guidance that this is fairly close. So Gaia itself, the primary source is the core of the Earth, which is down here, first dimension. which is the nurturing golden energy of the planet, of Gaia herself, Mother Earth. And as it comes forward out to the perimeter of the planet, from the inside out, these telluric energies, which are magnetic type energies that are both measurable and non-measurable by human science, ley lines, grids, and vortices are running from the center of the planet out into the atmosphere. And of course, we're on the surface of the Earth, and this is us here. We are the third dimension, and we're more or less in the sensory dualistic plane of consciousness. So what's below affects what's above, and what's above affects what's below. Now, it only goes up into the astral plane or the fourth dimension. Now, there are different subplanes here, but Gaia itself is primarily mostly all the way through the astral plane. And as we know, it's going through its ascension process, which is going from the fourth dimension up to the fifth dimension. This is important to note because what happens here in the astral plane affects this ascension process. And we will get into how the astral plane blockages that started here, usually through human intervention, human combat, wars, etc., anger, prejudices, what have you, set up negative vibrations that block energy up here in the astral plane. And therefore, in a way, was holding back Gaia and her essential into the fifth dimension. Okay, so based on that, the Earth plane is a gateway from higher dimensions into Gaia and from Gaia into the higher dimensions. So it's a layer effect. Humanity needs to make this connection. We are the ground wire needed to complete the circuit. So as you can see where we were here, we are the connection point, as I have written here, the gateway between this third dimension and the fourth dimension. We have a key role in connecting below to above. Since trap souls who impede the earth energy flow from the earth dimension, liberating them from the fourth dimension often needs to come where it started, here in the earth plane. Now I talk about trap souls. These are souls, people who die and cannot cross over into higher dimensions. They get locked in this fourth dimension, in this tertiary zone in the fourth dimension. And this discordant vibration or this trapness impedes the energy flow in the fourth dimension. So it's important that these souls be released, but not to flow, keep the energy flowing, but because they're part of us and we've got to help set them free. So what does this mean to you? Well, if you be conscious of earth energies in its many forms, these energies can lead to a higher spiritual consciousness or awareness and inner peace. A lot of the meditations I do, and I was taught, are based on centering in your heart center, going down into your lower chakra and into the core of the earth. The core of the earth, the very core, is the nest of Gaia, and connecting there is a tremendous and great peace, source of peace and tranquility. And from there, we go through the highest chakras up to our highest self, a higher creator, and we complete the circuit going all the way down. So I cannot emphasize it enough as being in touch with Earth is important. An example would be the Hindu master Ramana Maharshi lived in a mountain in India, lived near a mountain called Arunachala. And he actually felt the energy. This was an energy point. He felt a bliss coming from this mountain. And he would go up there every morning and spend the entire day in meditation and what have you, and come down at nighttime. I have experience, and the people I work with, my coworkers, have experiences, locations like this, where walking through the woods or certain areas, you just feel great. And these are energy centers that are sometimes temporary and permanent. And part of the work we do is to find one of these really good blissful places and augment the energy, sending it up into the higher dimensions, making that connection point. It's kind of like a spotlight that goes straight up into the higher dimensions to and back down again to keep that bliss and positive energy going. A good way to do this, and I suggest this strongly, is to walk barefooted on the ground and connect the yourself and your chakras down into the core of the earth. Now, sometimes that gets to be tough. I don't know. My feet are really sensitive at times, and I can't walk too far outside. So one suggestion is to get all leather moccasins, like indigenous tribes and Native Americans used to use, and that acts as a conductor of that energy going through, and it makes walking outside on the background a lot more pleasant. And feel like an Indian, Native American running around. Wearing regular shoes with rubber or insulated plastic type of soles acts as an insulation barrier, and the energy can't work its way through. I believe you can go online and I forget the company's name in Tonka or what have you. Hard to find because not many people are interested in that, but look for all leather moccasins, all leather shoes, and put them on and walk outside. The reason why this is important, again, I'll emphasize, is indigenous people used to dance barefooted. You've all seen photos of the tribes in Africa and in China doing dances, as well as Native Americans. And that coming back and forth like this with their bare feet act as a harmonizer to balance the energies, not only within themselves and in a higher dimension, but down into the earth. It was a balancing source. And that ain't happening anymore. Not many people doing indigenous dancing. If they are, they're probably wearing some nice shoes or sneakers. So to help go back to the way humanity used to in the indigenous times connect to the planet, a good way to do it is walk barefooted or wearing moccasins. That dancing that they did with Gaia on the earth would act as a conduit for that solar energy into the earth and the energy back up to the sun. So that gets into now the planetary dynamics, that you have the sun, which is the source of life here on earth. Without it, we wouldn't be here. And then the earth, which is a source of life, us also. There's that harmony needed between the sun and the earth. And we act as the gateway in between that. So and realizing now, and this broadcast is for the triangle and triad area in North Carolina, there's a lot of energy grids running through here at Ley Lines, which we'll show you. That's more available to you. There are ley lines all over. No matter where you live, you can tap into this energy, but some places have more than others. So keep that in mind. Let's get into ley lines and how they got their name. Kind of a peculiar name, but it came from a county tax map in the United Kingdom a while back, a couple of hundreds or so years ago. And just look at this little map that I made up and look at all of the names that end in L-E-Y. This is a reproduction of what really happened in real life. You'll notice in looking at these names, L-E-Y, if you see them, they formed a straight line right across here. Well, the tax assessor who saw this thought that was phenomenal and made it public and called it ley lines because the last name of the people on this line ended in L-E-Y, so ley lines. Pretty straightforward. Nothing amazing here, but kind of unique in a way. So ley lines really kind of took off in Europe, and what they take for granted there in these alignments between people, houses, and as these were extended out in his map of the UK, they're all over the place out there. Okay, and taken for granted, pretty much the not popular science over there, but a well understood science. Over here on the other side of the Atlantic, it's kind of like, what do you mean ley lines? So we're catching up. And they have a different point of view about it than we do. But we thank them for introducing this to us. So you could see all of these different particular lines, and there's even more than this. It's been said that if you got a pencil on a map and you drew a ley line for every particular alignment, you wouldn't see the map anymore. You would only see graphite pencil marks. They're all over the place. But here in the UK, this particular one right here was of supreme importance. This is called the Michael Mary line, and it goes from the western tip of England all the way up here to the eastern tip. And a lot of amazing places like Avebury and Glastonbury are Glastonbury here. Wonderful place. You ever got a chance to visit Glastonbury? Very, very mystical. I was there once, just enraptured immediately. So here is ley lines in action in Europe. Okay, so now let's talk about the grid system. There's the ley lines, and now there's the Earth energy grid system, which is a bit more like, ley lines would be side roads and country roads, where the grid system are the interstate highways, as an analogy. It's a network, a major network of energy lines that encircle the Earth. Not always associated with prominent landmarks. Sometimes they are. And the example is the UVG grid, which is the universal vector grid, and the Curry and Hartman grid system. Now, some of these grid systems are not necessarily beneficial. Sometimes the energy is discordant, and usually here in the Curry and Hartman grid, and there's ways that we use to rebalance those. These major systems are in place. They are permanent, more or less, and usually cannot be altered unless necessary. But when that happens, we usually follow guidance. And that gets into the team aspect of, a lot of times we work together and we meditate, and sometimes some of our teams have channelers, and we get information on which way to go and how to handle certain situations. And finally, there are dimensional biological and spiritual grids. Dimensional biological grids is there's an energy frequency grid system for everything that's living on the planet. Every form of life has its own grid. These are in higher dimensions and affect us and hold us in suspension here in the third dimension. There's also a spiritual grid system that was shown to me. Well, let's go, before I get to that, here's an example of the part of the UVG, the universal vector grid system. These are solid points throughout the planet, and you can see they go through the US here, Canada, all over the world. I've been to a few of these spots, usually over here in Arizona, and wonderful energy, wonderful energy. Another map here of which is more of the basic. Was drawn by two Earth energy workers and mathematicians, Becker and Huygens. Strange, prior to this, them drawing this back during the Soviet Union, geomancers in Russia came out with a map that was almost similar to this. And this was done independently and here in the West. And when they superimposed the maps, they were almost identical. So interesting. So now you're seeing how the grid system works. As a part of the major belts that run around, energy lines and paths that run around the planet. And this is just going in skin deep. You can go in deeper and deeper on the purpose of these and how they're used, but we don't have the time for that. Let's talk about nature grids. This is the one I found on my own. I was hiking through the forest in Alamance County, and I had my dowsing rods out, and I was demonstrating to some folks who were with me how they worked. And as I was walking through the woods, I noticed when you have dowsing rods, I brought some here, and when you get to a ley line, I don't know if you can see this, they open up like this, which means that energy circuit is running from left to right. And I go, what is this all about? I'm just walking through the woods here. And what I found out is there was a grid system in the forest just between lotus trees only. Lotus trees apparently, and I'm sure there's others, but I just found these, have this etherical energy path between them that caused the dowsing rods to line up with it, and bingo. I mean, everywhere there's a lotus tree, they were pointing to each other. So there are nature grids that connect living, in this case, trees, and I'm sure there are others, but we're exploring as we go along. The humanity heart grid system. We are all connected. This was given to me through guidance that we'll talk about later on. I was given this vision of people and how we're all connected. And it came to me where I saw hundreds of souls, mainly their heart centers. And there was a flame in every one of their heart centers, but there was a line connecting everybody together. It was a magnificent grid system. And I was told in this vision, this is how you work with people. Everybody is connected. Everyone is connected through their heart centers. And there's this beautiful energy grid system that makes us all one. We're all part of this net, tremendous grid that encircles the planet through our heart centers. Okay, so this is another example of as above, so below. So there's this master grid system going through the planet, through trees, and guess what? Through us also. We're all connected. Another phenomena in the Earth energy, vortices, that's plural, Singularity Vortex. Okay, now these are always, they pop up all the time. I'm doing the energy work. There is one particular one that I like. It's in, I live right outside of Saxapahaw. And inside of Saxapahaw, where they have the Saturday fest during the summer, there's one of these vortices that is just amazing. And I will explain more as we go through this about it, but it's amplified it on Saturday because right where it's at is where the belly slide is for all the kids. It's on like a slope going down, and they put this big tarp there, fill it with water, and all the kids go screaming down there, right through the vortice. And so in the summertime, the vortex is whack, you know, just because it picks up this joy and it just magnifies it. And now in the spring and winter, you know, it's a little bit smaller, but it's there, and I can feel the energy when I go there. It feels good. So there are 5 types of vortices, and they range anywhere from a few feet to hundreds of feet in diameter. And sometimes you'll find them on ley lines also. You'll find a vortice on a ley line, and that's a double whammy. And so we have clockwise rotating vortices, and we get that by, again, walking through when you're looking for them. I'm using dowsing rods now because I use these most of the time. Some people just can feel them. I'm getting to the point now where I can feel them more than I can. I don't need this as much as I did. So when you're walking through and looking for them, all of a sudden your dowsing rods will do a flip like that, all in one direction, which means you're entering the vortex. Just keep walking straight. And as you walk out to the other side of the spiral, they'll flip around and go the other way, which means now you're walking out of it. So sometimes they'll flip in a clockwise direction, otherwise a counterclockwise direction, and as you walk through it. So that's one type. Second type is counterclockwise. And then you have counter-rotating, where one ring you go through and the outer ring is clockwise and the inner is counterclockwise, or the other way around. The outer ring is counterclockwise, the inner one is clockwise. And they all have their own significance. Usually when you get into the counter-rotating ones, they're more of a portal or spiritual center. And I have found them in times when I was out west, forming in a perfect compass, north, south, east, west format around somebody's house. And they didn't even know they were there. And then I found them, and we put crystals around them to amp up the energy. They were just there. And she was led to build her house right at this spot. And there, little did she know that this is why you were led there. So elemental spirit presence. Now I want to get into the elemental kingdom shortly, but we're not alone here. You know, everybody, we know there are angels and higher beings and masters working with us, but there are earth energy elemental spirits. Now, that word elemental, you may kind of think it's that elemental, like, you know, like Sherlock Holmes, elemental, Watson, don't, you know, you think it's tiny, but these are not tiny beings. They maintain the grid systems, and some of them are quite huge. I've seen them like 50 feet high with, and you're kind of looking up at them. They maintain the grid system that keeps Gaia, or everything we see in this dimension, this hologram or illusion, however you want to look at it, they keep it all in place. They're kind of like the maintenance people, the contractors and maintenance people that go through all of this work for us to come here and experience the earth dimension. So walking through there at times, if you come near one of these spirits or they want to come near you, you can feel their presence. And it's sometimes quite blissful, quite blissful. And other times you don't feel anything at all. And other times you can walk through and find a depressed area, which is, I will talk about later when I talk about Grandfather Tree, where a tragedy happened. And that tragedy is held by the elemental spirits in the earth at that place. And you can feel something ain't right here. Something doesn't feel good. And we will get into that and how that happens and how to clear it. Here's an example of what a vortex would look like. Now, this is a pretty good photograph. This was taken on with an iPhone and from my niece in South America. And you can see the rings here spinning around. This would look like it's a clockwise ring, but this over here was her meditation altar. And she got back to take the picture, which I cropped just to show this. And these beams of energy coming in are spinning. This is a rare photograph of seeing interdimensional energy flow here in this dimension. I have done research along with other dowsers, and that ley lines are like this also. Their spirals are obviously much bigger. There are ley lines that are 100 yards wide. It's a whole football field wide, running through the earth from up and down through it, big spirals. So we're not talking about little pockets of area. They can be small, a couple of feet, in this case, a couple inches, or they can be pretty darn big, 100 yards wide, and they run through the whole planet at times. So, and you can become aware of these just by trying to be connecting more with the earth, being more indigenous. Part of us are more indigenous, and this starts to come alive. And the more you connect with the planet, with the earth, with the trees, the terrain, and connect with the core of the earth, you're not going to be lonely wherever you go, because you're going to feel that energy. And it's a beautiful feeling, beautiful feeling. Here we are, the elemental kingdom. All right, now, we know there's the human kingdom, there's the animal kingdom, there's the angelic kingdom. Right now, very little press given to the elemental kingdom, and it's an important kingdom because they work parallel to us, the human kingdom. Their hierarchy goes starts at the Elohim, which is in scripture. These are beautiful master beings who help design entire galaxies, universes. And below them are the builders of form. Now, and when I say below them, that means those elemental spirits that their function is to build planets and star systems, solar systems, as well as the parts of the planets, the earth, the mountains, the ground, the oceans, etc. They are the builders of the form. They're kind of like the engineers and construction folks. The Devic realm now, which starts around the 6th dimension. This is up here, this 8, 7, 6, what have you. And the Devic realm is the 6 on down. They're more or less the divas are the higher beings, mostly feminine and extremely attractive, very beautiful, pure light energy coming down to maintain the energy in a certain geographical area. They're also now working with them and more direct in maybe the 4th or 5th dimension are the spirits of the air, the spirits of the earth, the spirits of fire, and the spirits of water. Now, fire is important here because not only is it fire, but it's transmutation. Fire transmutes solid into gas, into heat and energy. So anytime we're working on transmuting something like our own illness or what have you, or thought patterns or reducing spiritual emotional problems, sometimes the fire spirits will come and assist in that. Right? So the air spirits, example, what they do, they would work on weather patterns, tornadoes, regular beautiful days, etc. They move the air around in coordination with how the earth is designed, but also on clearing negativity in the earth. A lot of times violent thunderstorms and hurricanes are not only physical phenomena, but they are astral phenomena of balancing the energy on the astral plane in order to balance the energy that's out of balance. We found that out once in working with air spirits and trying to ward off hurricanes. You know, don't come here, get out, back out to the ocean. And the response was, sorry, we can't. We would, but we need to do this. It's important. So, and a lot of us who work with the elementals learn to, okay, do what you got to do, but try not to hurt as many. Just do what you got to do. And we just pray for the highest good to come out. And that's important, to pray for the highest good. When you pray for the highest good, you back your ego out of it, because we don't know what really is the highest good in itself, because we all have our own personal views and convictions of this. But as we work and ask for the highest good, we're putting a balance in. The earth spirits are Terra, working with, that's T-E-R-R-A, working with mountains, streams, land, trees, and what have you. And fire sometimes is the physical fire as well as the transmutation fire. Now we talk about transmutation. A good example of that is when a tree falls down and it rots away. Those are the spirits of transmutation, of the fire spirits who are supervising that decay. If it wasn't for the fire spirits, we wouldn't be here, because you consider how many millions of years trees have been falling down. And if they didn't rot, you know, we'd be like 20 miles high under trees, fallen trees. So there are different layers of these spirits. So there's the element, the very core or learning layer would be the transmutation of rotting. And as the higher they go, their responsibility gets higher. This is very, and notice before we leave, the spirits of water are oceans, lakes, anything that's refilled with water. And they foster and maintain life of all sorts within the water system that they work with. Ponds, lake. I've been engaged once with a water spirit in a lake, and it's quite interesting. If we have time, we'll talk about that. I hope this is making sense to you. It's important we work with these spirits. If you're familiar with the works of Alice Bailey, who was a great channeler back in the 30s and 40s and early 50s, she channeled the Master Dwal Kul, the Master DK. And there are written volumes upon volumes of this really groundbreaking work back in spirituality, albeit 60 or 70 years ago. 80 years ago? Okay, back then, is it 100? Oh, like, yeah, wow, yeah. Yeah, I was much older back then. So anyway, we ought to work, according to the Master Dwal Kul, we ought to work hand in hand with the Devic realm. Now, why is that? And we're supposed to work hand in hand, and most of us don't even know about it. We work hand in hand because we all follow the law of manifestation. As we so believe and feel, so it manifests. You want to work with the folks who actually do the manifesting, which are the Devic realms, who make spiritual energy into matter energy. So it's kind of like you are the engineering department. You give these blueprints to the construction department, and you just walk away. You know, say, all right, it's up to you. And now you want to work with them to make sure they got it right. So it's this constant communication and understanding, and realizing that these spirits exist, and work with them, and just be conscious of their presence and thankful of what they're doing, because they work very hard to keep us here. And they work very hard to clean up our mess. So for example, you know, we're polluting the atmosphere. We are polluting all over the place. Guess who goes in and cleans that stuff up? These folks do, all right, to try to maintain the harmony and balance. So there are some writers who say, who have experienced it, the elemental kingdom is not too fond of the human kingdom, because what we're doing is not too cooperative with the basics of Gaia. But nevertheless, they will and are willing and happy to work with us. Okay, so we've made it to part 2. So let's get specifically now into ley lines of the triangle in North Carolina. In this part here, there are some subgroups I want to discuss in part 2. So not only are we going to talk about the ley lines, but how to clear them when they get blocked, as well as other earth energy blockages, which usually most of the time is from trap souls. We'll talk about them and how they get there, and some elemental spirit encounters, and why there is a value in working with teams. Very important that you work in teams, especially on a larger project. Okay. Here's just a general schematic on how a ley line would work and how it's formed. So here we have some prominent features. Let's say here's a river, mountain, and a lake. So there is this telluric energy flow underground and up into as high as the 4th dimension, and sometimes even higher, depending on the importance of the ley line, etc. Between the lake and the river, between the lake and the mountain, and between the mountain and the river. So there's this energy flow, or the ley line, and you know where the word ley came from. This is a general schematic. Now, let's add to that. Along comes human habitation. And now we have a city on this ley line. And notice in this case, we talked about, I made it a city that's pretty harmonious and kind of somewhat spiritually or religiously oriented, and a nice place to live. Not only is they picking up the energy from the ley line, but they add to it. So you would have a more positive running energy ley line. So here's where human consciousness comes into the telluric energies of the planet. It's kind of like shaking hands. Let's do this. On the flip side of that, now let's say we had a negative spot, like a battlefield, a prison camp, a prison, where there is a certain sequestering of energies, combat, people dying. Could be many things. Slave camps, old Civil War plantations, death camps, POW camps. The list goes on. The list goes on. So what we normally do, and when I say we, I mean the collective team of my coworkers throughout the world, as well as higher dimensional folks we work with, we would go in and try to clear this battlefield so this energy line is restored. Or we would put amplifiers in the form of sacred geometry, say up here or somewhere over here or in somebody's house, to amp up this energy going through. So here you have a schematic of what ley lines and block ley lines would look like. Getting right into it now, map of good old North Carolina. When I first moved down here and looked at the map, I just was shot immediately. Bingo. I said, there got to be ley lines through here. And the reason is, look over here at the coast. Now we talked about, you know, the amount of rivers being sources of energy. Well, the whole ocean is a source of energy. You ever gone down to the beach, Carolina Beach, and what have you, to sit out in the sun? Something you almost feel the energy coming in. It's just tachyons just blowing in all over the place. But when you have landmarks like this, notice how these inlets over here, this is the, I believe the Albemarle Sound, Pimlico River, and the Neuse River here, and also down here is the Cape Fear River. We'll talk about that one. But primarily these 3 points pointing inland, you know, just the energy is flowing this way. It's kind of like flowing that way, and it's kind of like flowing this way. It's right across here. So it's like, I mean, this is ley line 101. So let me advance that. So now, as you could see, here is the cities in the triangle and the triad area. You notice how they're kind of being pointed at? Now, this over here existed 50 to 100,000 years before people moved in over here. So it, perhaps the attraction of this energy flow coming in that caused everybody to move here. And if you ever seen a nighttime map of North Carolina, what's lit up? And right over here is lit up, and right over here is lit up. It Charlotte. There are others, but primarily it's the triangle triad area. So let's keep looking at this. Now, to balance it out, if you remember the drawing I showed you at the beginning, there was a river pointing to a mountain. So you have a receiver and a transmitter and a transmitter and a receiver going back and forth. The energy flows back and forth. So just so happens, now there are a lot of mountains out here in the Appalachian Trail, in the Appalachian Blue Ridge Mountains. But the ones that stood out to me the most primarily is Pilot Mountain. If you've never been there, place to visit. Pilot Mountain is one of the master energy centers in the Southeast. Encompasses the whole Southeast in a particular type of energy that comes out of there. And this is due to a lot of the work. I found this out in the work of Peter Champeau in his book, The Gaia Matrix, which I referred to at the end. I'll have a list of bibliography you can look at. He has done a lot of research and this finding out the energy pattern of Pilot Mountain. Another energy source is Mount Mitchell, which is the highest mountain east of the Rockies. I think it's 6,700 feet high. It is a tremendous transmitter of energy. When I first was introduced to it, I was like 10 miles away on a deck at a resort, and the woman who was running the resort said, "You see that mountain peak that's hidden in between these other mountains?" It stood up a little bit. She said, "That's Mount Mitchell." And when I stared at it, the energy flow coming out was so great that I was actually pushed back against the wall. That's how powerful the energy coming out of Mount Mitchell is. And we have up here now in Virginia, Buffalo Mountain, not as dramatic, but very scenic and spiritual. So in connecting the dots, this is what you got. You've got these ley lines now running up here from Albemarle Sound down to Mount Mitchell, Pimlico Sound to Pimlico River Inlet over here to Pilot Mountain, and from the Neuse River Basin coming in, going up to Buffalo Mountain. And you see all of the cities in the triangle and the triad are right over here. And with further explanation, this is kind of generically looking at it. You'll see here at the right side is more or less the masculine side. We've got the triangle, Research Triangle Park. You've got the state government here. You've got the three universities, UNC, NCC, and NC State, and Duke, who are kind of like, you know, basketball, football, baseball, just competition, et cetera, as well as the trauma centers here in Chapel Hill. So this is more or less the masculine side, looking at it that way. And over here is the feminine side. Over here you have the art schools, you have the music schools, and you have the furniture center. So you can see it's a little bit softer over here in the triad as it is in the triangle. So there's this beautiful harmonic blend, right, coming right through over here. You know, what does this mean to you? I was out doing ley line work in Alamance County once, and there's a country store run by a pretty sharp, astute woman that runs a nice country store. Her name was Vivian, and I walked in, and I'd shopped there before, and the ley lines run right through a property. I'm out there verifying where these ley lines are, because when you make these on Google Earth, these are mathematical or theoretical projections where they, you know, these exist. They should exist because of this makeup. And when I went out to verify that, I actually printed this down to almost the town level. And I had sections of the map with the line going through. And this is a good part about Google Earth is that it's in its software, it takes into consideration the curvature of the planet, which you lose in a flat pattern Mercator projection map. You don't get that. Yeah, so the lines are really not true as they are here in Google Earth. Albeit Google Earth has got certain software issues, but nevertheless, it's a good, amazing tool to work with. So I went out there and I have found that from my projections of where these ley lines are to where they actually are was about 100 to 200 yards off. Not bad, I thought. And I did this, of course, with dowsing rods, walking out on the roads, you know, with my yellow vest on to make sure I looked official and get run over. And I was walking to where it should be, nothing. And I kept walking, maybe 50 yards, 100 yards later, whoa, there they were, right on. And these ley lines are about 80 to 100 yards wide. So they're pretty massive. Again, this is energy, telluric energy running through the planet in the area of North Carolina. So take advantage of this, be conscious of it, and use that energy to support what you're actually doing. This is what I told Vivian. It just makes you do whatever you do better because of you now boosting, turbocharging with this ley line telluric second dimensional energy. And sometimes hard dimension. Some of these ley lines go all the way up to the fifth, ninth, seventh dimension, depending on what's associated with them in the higher realms. Okay, I'll take that map in. And what I've done here is put even more towns and cities that fall close to these lines over here. So here you have Rocky Mounts, you got Wake Forest, Knightsdale, Wilson, Greenville, Kinston, Newbern, and on the other side here, Thomasville, Morganton, and what have you. So you can see people being drawn as these towns develop to the area where the energy is really fertile. All subconscious. I have found on the flip side what they call violet lines, where things are not too good, and you'll see battlefields running where generals seem to be attracted to a certain area, and that's where the conflict is. So there's a battle line that runs from Newbern across, and of course there was a Civil War battle in Newbern, through Fort Bragg, and then there's Kings Mountain, Cowpens, Chattanooga, and going into Tennessee, Memphis, and Shiloh. So, and they ain't connected by any roads, by any means, and what have you. But all these battles line, and you see a lot of this in Europe too, battle lines in Europe and what have you. There's a flip side to this too. So take advantage of where you're at. And of course, in the battle lines is where most of our teams go to help clear, because if there's a battle line, a battle site, there's usually trapped souls that need to cross over. And they've been there. I did a clearing once at Cowpens where there was a British sergeant who's laying face down, cursing for 200 years because of the ambush they fell into, and the officers didn't sense that they were going to be ambushed and sent his whole regiment in, and they were wiped out. And this poor soldier was just so upset that they fell for this trap and got away. The officers got away. And just study the Battle of Cowpens. It's just amazing at the defeat that happened there of the British Army by the Continental Army. So anyway, we had to go and rescue this one sergeant. He was trapped there. And we do this out of compassion, not because we want to clear a ley line. Yeah, that's it. But once you get there and feel the trauma that these people are going through, you want to help them cross over, or their soul remnant cross over. Sometimes they cross over and leave part of their soul there. And of course, that's not good for them either. So it's a noble work, but it's not for everybody. You know, this is a calling because sometimes it gets fairly intense. And I'm going to go through some clearings we did later on that are really gut wrenching. Okay, because you're involved in a lot of human trauma. You can't really help until you can get above it. So, well, I'm glad to share this with you. And if you are interested in this, like Susan said before, just send me a text or email, and we can work about that. Okay, so here you have the prime example of ley lines of the triangle and the triad. Okay, there are other ley lines that run through, mainly Pilot Mountain is the hub. And I'll show you some interesting rock formations at Pilot Mountain that kind of indicate that these lines run through there. So we have what's called the city ley line here. That really, you see this line that goes across here, follows the Appalachian Mountains. And it starts in Mexico City, or just south of Mexico City. There's a series of volcanoes. Some are active, 2 or 3 of them. It's 2 active and about 3 or 4 inactive volcanoes that are hubs for ley lines that run throughout the United States and through South America. There's one that goes through Arizona that I've worked with. That's quite significant. But I'm going to stay here on the East Coast. So anyway, look at here. See how people, these are what's called the city ley line or the Appalachian ley line. Is you have New Orleans, Mobile, Montgomery, Atlanta, some around here kind of spread out a bit, but then on the Northeast there, Philly, Washington, Philly, Baltimore, Trenton. You can just see all of these cities: Newark, New Haven, New York City, Hartford, Boston, Providence, and up here at St. John's. Yeah, this line goes all the way across through Stonehenge, by the way, in England. It goes across the top of the pole and in through a lot of significant places in Europe and ends near Riyadh in Arabia. So it goes from Mexico City all the way to Riyadh. And this is called the line of governance because here we have the so-called free world. At one time, you had the major government here in Washington, D.C., and then the financial government, the financial capital in Manhattan. This line runs right through it. So we would often go to Pilot Mountain and set up sacred geometry because I'm a metal fabrication artist. So I would get the designs and build them, and we go there and set up these energy points to help shoot energy out the ley line to help make it unified positive energy going out there. So this is the city ley line. Now we have another ley line called the Serpent ley line because it goes from over here from the Cape Fear River Inlet down in Wilmington's right here through Pilot Mountain and up through Serpent Mound, Serpent Mound up through Ohio. It passes further up here in Wisconsin, Minnesota through the headwaters of the Mississippi River and shoots up through Lake Banff in Canada and then out into Alaska and out into the Arctic Ocean. And this is a significant ley line that was tremendously blocked. And we'll go through in that series how we found that and how we had to clear it. And nice story about this. So let's go look at Pilot Mountain. If you've not been out there, I strongly suggest you go out there. It's on the weekend, it's kind of crowded because it's it's so crowded that the state has opened up a new visitors center with a lot of parking because when you drive to the top, the parking gets kind of scarce because so many people come there. Best if you can go during the week, but if you can't go during the week, go on the weekend. This is taken from the observation deck. So the mountain is actually split in half. This is called the Pinnacle, and there's a trail that walks all the way around and comes out the other side. And you would think you're in Wyoming. I mean, just beautiful rock formations. And on this side over here is the rest of the mountain. Dramatic scenery. If you did visit and go for a walk, just beautiful. Takes about an hour to do the whole course. Now, on the northwest side, which is now fenced off for environmental reasons, we used to be able to walk out here on this ledge and in placing a compass here in the cracks, notice the work that over here is the Serpent ley line. Believe it or not, the rocks are cracked within 6 degrees of the course I got, the heading I got on Google Earth to the actual cracks that are in the rocks. So, and this is the city ley line right here. And this is the city ley line, and this is the Serpent ley. The rocks actually split almost exactly to the heading that was on Google Earth. You know, we have to allow for magnetic variations. Very difficult to get these things just right, but it's close enough to say like they line up, you know, within 5 degrees. That's pretty darn good. And we use this later on, I mean, the teams I work with to clear the ley lines, which ley line was that. It's just naturally in the stones for us there. Just it's like big arrows pointing, go this way, go that way to do the energy work. And here again is how we did this by placing a compass in there and then getting the reading on the compass and verifying with app on Google Earth, plus or minus variation. Difficult in a way because there is embedded iron within the granite, so it's going to throw the compass off a little bit, but it's close enough for government work to get the idea of how it all fits together. Okay, so let's get into some stories about clearings that I've been privileged to work with. First, let's talk about dark coalesced energy. Now, this one's going to really shock you, but this really is true. And I've talked to other energy workers who have encountered this, and this is for real. So what this means is that, and probably figured out, is all of the negative thinking that the human race puts out there, anger, arrogance, egotism, hatred, bigotry, etc. These are transmissions we are sending out. You know, when we think, you know, in law of manifestation, when you want, you know, you hold it when your people are constantly angry and there's riots and hatred, all of that stuff goes out. And it starts to coalesce in a dark energy cloud by mutual attraction. So you have, let's say, energies of anger floating out in a higher third or lower fourth dimension. And of course, there are not too nice, negative, or dark spirits that feed off of that. You ever hear the word bloodlust? It's because during battlefields, battles or fighting, there's people just lose it and start fighting, and it's because that some of that energy is being fed off from beings in a higher dimension. So that energy coalesces, and it starts to take a form, and it takes the form of the source, which is humans. So therefore, you have this black cloud coalescing down and starts to take a human form. Now, I've come in two encounters. One was coalesced dark energy I encountered once in a spiritual journey within the earth, and it was totally lost and kind of alien looking, but not too nice, but not too somewhat aggressive. And I managed to work with higher self and guides to neutralize it. And the funny part, the confirming part that it worked is when I drove back home. This is when I was up in New York. My wife at the time said, you know, strange thing happened. At about 2 o'clock, there was a loud crash in the bathroom. And I went in there, and the big flower vase we had on the wall fell off. Don't ask me how, and crashed on the floor. So that was kind of like, same time I was doing this earth clearing. Somehow the forces to be have a way to verify that this, okay, you did this, here's the response. It's kind of like a confirmation in a way. The second one happened here in North Carolina. I was hiking on a trail in Johnson County, and I'm walking through the woods, and all of a sudden, boom, I get this feeling, go to this tree now. And of course, you don't argue with this, you do it. You go to the tree, and I just kind of went into the tree, meditated, and I popped up into a higher dimension. And I could see the trees. The forest line is very similar in a higher dimension as it is here. And this elemental spirit, which looked like a fairy, comes screeching out of the woods, scares all hell, goes flying right by me. Kind of Tinkerbell looking, maybe about 3 feet high, but in pure terror. And I waited a second, and I could see coming out of the woods, the forest, this black cloud with eyes, and it was starting to take some sort of a silhouette form, and it was moving toward me. And I knew immediately from my prior experience what this was. This was coalesced negative energy that was rampaging through the area. And this is what they do. And the elemental kingdom pays the price for this. So I said, okay, what do I do now? And before I could even think that, this same voice came into me. He says, call in Arcturus. Now, who's Arcturus? Well, I flattened out later on is that Arcturus, remember that chart I showed you of the elemental kingdom, Arcturus is an Elohim, very high being of the violet ray, which is the cleansing ray. And I just called in, okay, Arcturus, I need your assistance. And you have to be very sincere when you do this. And this thing's coming at me. It's about 20 feet away now. And this violet line of light comes right down and just disappeared. Everything was just transmuted. The angels, the beings of the violet flame, transmuted that negative energy into and transmuted it back into unified energy, back into the pool of love and light. So be careful what you think, because you're transmitting stuff out there, and you do it on a civilization with millions upon hundreds of millions of people being lost, angry, or afraid, or scared. You're pumping energy into the fourth dimension. So something to think about. My clearing with an ancient tree. This is that, remember I showed you the grid with the hearts all in network in a grid system? I have been hiking through, I live not far from the Bear Mountain Herman State Park in New York, which was 100 square miles of parkland. Beautiful, I mean, rugged terrain and majestic rock formations. And I would, about a half a mile in on the trail going up the side of a mountain or a hill, that wasn't a mountain climber. I was older then, but I couldn't do that. There was this tree, this tremendous oak tree that was, I called grandfather tree because I could tell by its size and girth, it was probably the oldest tree in the forest. So I called it grandfather tree. But as I walked by it, I brought this up before about feeling depressive energy. This sinking energy was just so depressing. I said, wow, what is this about? So I sat next to the tree and I meditated, bringing in the light and love from the higher dimension, lower dimension, into the tree to help clear this. Now I did this for about maybe 6 weeks straight. I would go hiking in the woods about twice a week. So after about maybe 7 or 8 of these visits, I suddenly felt that, hey, wait a minute, this actually feels good now. There's been a reversal. We actually cleared this. And then, you know, here I am just feeling really nice and happy, and I see this shadow walk in front of me. Now, something's out there, and I go, oh, okay, who's here? You know, and I knew there was an entity here. And this pure, nice voice comes through. I'm the diva of the forest, and I live in the top of this tree, and I thank you so much for clearing this energy. So unlike humans to do this. And I said, well, okay, my pleasure. You know, we're all part of the same family here. And she said, it kept thanking me. I didn't know if it was a he or she. I found out later on it was a she. And I said, and she said, you should work with humans that way. And I said, well, it's tough working with humans because, you know, they're never satisfied. They argue with you and they kind of mess things up anyway after you work with them. So it's more pleasant for me to work with trees and earth energy. And then she showed me this matrix I showed you. She's the one who said to them, work with them in their hearts, because all humans are connected in their hearts. And that vision, which I gave you the map of, the slide of, just appeared in front of me. And it just, wow, I saw all of these silver hearts with flames in them, all connected with this matrix lines going back and forth. And then just to add to that, I said, this is wonderful. Thank you very much. I get this beautiful energy came down on top of me where she was thanking me with sending this love energy down, and it was just beautiful and blissful. And she stood with me. That's how I know it was a she, because I could tell it was feminine energy. As I left the park, and I'd walked that half a mile out, her energy diminished more and more. And as I got to the boundary, at the very end of the park where the parking lot was, and I put my foot on the blacktop, gone. It's like she could not exist in the human habitation, because right at the blacktop were houses and cars. Nice sensation, and a nice gift I got from it. And I know a big experience on clearing. Okay. Okay, I have one more story for you about the Confederate sentries, and this happened down here. When I started working with some healing groups in both Chapel Hill and Raleigh, and this goes back about 10 years. We were walking out, and there was, sometimes I'm given clairaudience, clairvision, clairvoyance, and clairsentience. I can feel and just know things are there without seeing them. But other members of the team are clairvoyant; they can see. So we're comparing notes, and this Confederate sentry in Confederate uniform with his musket over his shoulder, I can sense, but they can see, was standing there on guard. And they said, well, you can leave now. The war is, you know, you can go. You just go back, you know. And said, no, this is my orders. I'm staying here. I can't leave my post. And no matter what the team said, I'd say anything about this. I'm just kind of like observing. The spirit, who's now in the fourth dimension, didn't want to leave. I said, this is my post. He would say, this is my post, and I can't leave. And I remember in studying the Civil War, when the war was over, Robert E. Lee told all of his troops, lay down your arms, war is over with. And I told them to tell that to the troops. That General Lee said, it's the war is over, you can go home. They said that. And at that point, and this happened later on in Chapel Hill, a smile on his face, and poof, gone, like he was laughing, I can go, and disappeared right on the spot. So it was kind of like a neat way to interface with a soul who cannot leave because of the mental conviction that he held. And I'll dwell on this later on as we go through clearings, that souls become trapped because of various reasons they can't cross over. And we work with them to get through that. So I think it's about time now for a break. So meet you all back here in 5 minutes. Thank you. Before we go to the next slide, I just want to emphasize that I did talk about dark coalesced energy. Remember, the flip side of that is true. When you get prayer groups together, sending out light and love to the earth, that is positive energy that goes up. And that should be directed to the higher dimensions through the energy grid ley lines. So, or the elemental kingdom or the angels can work with that and send that out as needed for the highest good. So think about that. And prayer groups, positive prayer, positive thinking, meditation groups, all add to that the value of good energy or high, non-discordant energy, harmonious energy that can go out in the ethers. And you do this for the highest good, because you really don't know what the highest good is. Sometimes people do have to go through some sort of turmoil as part of their soul lesson. You don't know. So you always send out light and love for the highest good, or they call it right action, for right action. Okay, so with that, we'll just go now, some of the techniques for clearing block energy. The most important one I've been using is the 4 directions. Now, this is at times an indigenous, thought of as an indigenous way of doing ceremonies. But and not only that is true, but it's also a Buddhic way. The Buddhists, when they do their sand art, there's always 4 gates. Those 4 directions are gateways into higher consciousness. And when you study the dynamics of the planet within the solar system, you get to understand how intense north, south, east, and west really are, with the Earth rotation, the magnetic field, and how it supports and makes the Earth live. These are gateways also into higher consciousness. And there's a technique I've been taught and have been used for a decade now in opening up these 4 portals, these 4 gates, and going to step number 2, raising or integrating this dualistic 3D and 3-dimensional issue that is facing us. So let's go to number 2 now. You have this like dualistic thinking down here of light versus darkness, or good versus bad, until you convert that into a higher dimensional love. It's unfortunate in a way that the dimension we live in, 3D, is highly competitive, therefore dualistic. You know, you got college teams, professional teams always going at each other. We have corporations trying to do out another one. We have countries trying to win and outdo others. There's always this competitive attitude that has its core in dualism, dualistic thinking, and that gets out of control at times. And we have to start working into, to go into the ascension process, to be unified unity consciousness, where all is one, bringing the dark and the light, or the good and the bad, together, and be collaborative instead of competitive. Okay, so you bring it into a high dimensional love, and seek and stay centered within your true self when you do this, which is love. You observe the condition and ask for right action for the highest good, bringing the condition into spirit, the golden light. And this is a sort of entrainment, where you entraining the duality and chaos into oneness, this golden light of the creator, and the golden aura that emanates from the core of the earth. The core of the earth has got this joyous love, this golden aura that unites with the higher dimensional creator, the God love, and the 3rd and 4th dimension are the gateways right in between. So what we want to do is be the wire or the conduit for those to come together and up. You always send everything up. You don't bring it down, more or less, into the chaos. You bring the chaos up into the light and for the highest good. Sometimes this happens too fast for you to get into this technique, and that's where you have to call in for higher support. It's happened to me at times where, boom, when you do this type of work, there's dark forces that don't particularly like energy workers. because we're clearing up some of the darkness that they rely on, and we're helping souls cross over that they have dominion over. So at times we find ourselves in situations that ain't too pleasant, and we're kind of off duty. So boom, we just call in for highest support at that time, call in for Jesus the Christ consciousness for light and support in this before we can get back into our own source. But it's always good to live within your own source all the time, because it's loving and it's nice. And in the last sentence down here, I had this encounter once with Gaia, which to me was a revelation. She told me purely, like this loud and clear, that I don't need to be healed. I just need intelligent companionship, which I thought was, wow, she's raising us to her level. We are companions with Gaia. We're not out to heal her because she's broken or hurt. You know, there's damage, but that's the damage we mainly cause, and we need to clear being a good companion, clear up our own stuff, and that's what we've been doing. So it's a beautiful thing where she's calling us companions with her. So with that, working as a companion with Gaia, here's a schematic, more or less, on a way how this healing companion or unity process works. And I've got this set up here in this cross with like the 4 dimensions, north, south, east, and west. And I put good on this side and dark or evil on that side. In Lakota tradition, in the west is where the thunder beings are. And the light and life comes from the east, and it depends on how well you do. If you follow the red road, you will be okay. If you follow the black road of duality, you got to face the thunder beings, and you don't want to face the thunder beings. So that's they're pretty tough dudes, and that's the karma. So the north-south line, which they call the red road, is always bringing the duality up into oneness. So you bring the awareness of good and evil to spirit for the highest good. The Templar Knights also had a similar, they call it, there's the white road, where if they were caught in duality, they did not bring the white light down into duality. You bring the duality up into the white light. There's a karma consequence where you bring in that type of energy into discordant. You bring the discord up into and unify it into one. And this takes a lot of humility because ego gets involved. You know, you want to get in there and duke it out and straighten everything out and look what I did. No, this has got to be done in purity and in humility. We are vessels of the Creator to do this type of work. And it's a joy and a blessing. But we all have our tasks to do. Not everybody is designed for this, but everybody's got some sort of quest that they're on. And by being on their quest and living humility, it raises the energy all the way around. So no matter what you're doing, whatever your spiritual path is, just keep doing that, okay? And follow guidance from within. All right, here's a nice story for you. This is Fort Caswell, which is down there in Cape Fear River Basin, south of Wilmington. And now we're talking about the ley line, the Serpent ley line that goes from the Cape Fear River Basin up through Pilot Mountain and across to the Alaska and into the Pacific. Part of we were called to clear the blockages here, and part of the blockages to be cleared was Fort Caswell. And this is a kind of a funnier story. I was with a healing team here, and this is the parapets of the fort, goes all the way around. And this stepping down over here goes down into the magazine of the fort. Now the magazine is where they kept all the gunpowder and ammunition. And this is a Confederate fort, almost in pristine condition. And it was a Confederate stronghold guarding the Cape Fear River Basin from the Union ships going up. So what we found that there were Confederate soldiers still here, or some sort of trapped entities. As I walked through here, 2 of my coworkers were at the hallway going down deeper into the magazine, and they had stopped and were almost backing up. And they were saying there's something really dark and evil down there. They didn't know what to do about it. And so I said, well, I'm going to go in. And I went, and I walked down there, and there's a pathway going down into the cement line, a brick line, big, tremendous vault room where they kept all the gunpowder, and it was protected because if it ever got hit by an incoming round, it would blow up. So as I'm walking down there, this figure walks out from the side right in front of me. And I look up, this guy, it's a man, about 8 to 10 feet tall, giant, with long, black, knurled hair and a long black beard. And he had a tattered Confederate soldier uniform on him. And I'm standing there looking up at this guy. And I didn't panic, but I just like, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. And he's scowling, looking down at me. And this is what the dark energy that's coming out. And I looked at his uniform, and he was a corporal. He had 2 stripes. So he's basically a non-commissioned officer. And so was I. When I was in the Air Force, I was the tech. I was actually his senior in rank, so I could kind of talk to him. And I looked at him and I said, oh my gosh, it just came out of me naturally. I didn't scold him or try to enlighten love. I just had a conversation. I said, oh, you're a corporal, you're a sergeant, you're a non-commissioned officer. I was one too. I know what you're going through. And I just started talking to him. I said, we catch guff from the top, from the officers. We catch guff from the men below us. We're caught in between this struggle. It's tough, isn't it? I had to go through that, so I know what you're going through. And this guy, now he's not scowling anymore. He's kind of just looking at me. I'm having this conversation with this 10-foot-high tattered spirit, you know? And he just looked and just started to smile. And he's laughing, and I could feel the joy. And then, boom, gone. Up he went. Just cleared him like that. So sometimes, you know, it's a joyful clearing. A lot of times it is joyful because when they go up, and you can feel the release. There was some other trap souls there too that were cleared also. And, that was a good start. This happened about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. So let's talk about that line. So we were down here. Here again is map of North Carolina and the East Coast. And this is the Serpent Ley Line going up to Pilot Mountain and Serpent Mound. And I'll show you a picture of that, what this looks like. So this is Serpent Mound in Ohio. And you can see, here's the head of it. And this is a mound. It's a dirt mound that's about 2 or 3 feet, someplace 4 feet high. And it's been dated to anywhere from 1,000 years old to 300 years old, just depending on what archaeologist you read. And it's about 1,100 feet long and spirals around. But up here at the head this is the head, and it's swallowing an egg. And this is the walkway that goes around it. And what I did is when I was down at Caswell, I picked up some sand and I brought it up here and I dropped it off to connect the bottom part of the ley line to the top part of the ley line. And it's just wonderful energy. When I was sprinkling the sand around, it just felt really great. I could feel like this connection being made. So this is part of the energy grid that it connects it to Pilot Mountain through the Neuse River Basin. Now, this is at the bottom part of the ley line. That's the USS North Carolina. There was a TV series way back when, 8 years ago, 10, called Ghost Hunters. Not the movie was Ghostbusters. And ghost hunters would go around and go to haunted places and try to find the ghosts. They came twice to North Carolina. It's been noted to be haunted by, they don't know who. And the TV show I watched was pretty significant and showed how it was haunted. And I didn't really find the urge to go down there and do any clearing, but subsequent times I would change a channel for about 2 or 3 days straight. And no matter where I went, there was always battleships, World War II, no matter what channel, it's like World War II battleships with the Japanese bombers, kamikazes. I got it. I got to go back. I understood. That's how sometimes spirit talks to you. You get all of these synchronicities that one after the next, Like, okay, I got it. We got to go down and do clearing work on North Carolina. So I got my friend Mark at that. He was an energy worker also. And we were both motorcyclists. So we went down there and I had, this is the port side of the ship. And it was torpedoed right about here, and 7 to 8 men, sailors, were killed with a torpedo struck during World War II. So we had figured out we had to go here. We could walk along the deck and do a clearing ceremony, okay? And we went down there, parked our bikes, and went in. And we had, this is not that good of a slide, but you see there's a ramp going up here. Now we tried walking up that ramp to get to the port side to do our clearing. We couldn't make it. We were hit with the wall of pure hatred energy. it was like we're walking into a hailstorm of anger. Just feel it. Well, it was pushing us back. Oh, what is this? So we instinctively, had a hard time. What do? We just started sending love. Connect with your inner spirit. We're both Lahu Chi practitioners too, by the way. So we started sending Lahu Chi energy up to heal and love. Send it, do a reversal. Heal it with love to integrate the energy. Love to integrate the energy. And after a couple of minutes, the force wasn't as strong. We're starting to make headway here. More love, and then force diminished, and then at the top of the ramp, we saw a silhouette. There was a person there, and it wasn't this guy. I'm telling you what it looked like, though. It was a Japanese fighter pilot, probably a kamikaze pilot, standing there looking pretty tough. And now this is not him. This is Saburo Sakai, who was a Japanese fighter pilot in World War II, lived to be in the year, of the year 2000. But I took this file photo of him because this is kind of like the stance we were up against. In that type of uniform with the headdress and everything else, looking kind of fierce and arms folded in anger. And we just kept sending up light and love, and then everything reversed. And we could see him smile. And then from there was glow about him, and he just ascended. And as he ascended and spiraled up, the feeling of joy and elation was overwhelming. It was just pure bliss. And we got this spiral of energy going up into a higher dimension, being his trapped soul being released, just created this feeling of a tornado of bliss. And it was like, I felt like that for days on end. And you don't want to let go of this type of energy when you feel it, but that's a little bit of a trap, because if you get too attached to it, you may bring them back down again. You don't want to do that. So you have to learn how to, it's loving, it's nice, okay, thank you. And you just kind of go on and do your business, what you have to do. So this is one way that we had to clear this ley line. Now, there was a couple of other situations, all revolving around the same type of incident of World War II. So World War II had blocked as well as the Civil War, the bottom part of the ley line. And then we found out that this ley line now, which runs all the way out here, this is North Carolina, so Pilot Mountain's around here. Here's the Wilmington, Cape Fear. It goes all the way through Canada, out through Alaska, and into the Pacific. And we went up to Pilot Mountain with another team, and we looked up northwest, and the ley line was blocked. We could feel anger again, screaming, fighting, all sorts of violence, warfare. And I wasn't familiar at the time, and I went back to study, and we have to clear the ley line. We couldn't do it with the group I was with, but there was a battle in World War II, the Battle of Attu Island, which is right over just north of the ley line. That was violent hand-to-hand combat. I think in the matter of an hour, 1,200 Japanese soldiers were killed, 600 Americans, and 600 Japanese soldiers committed suicide, largest mass suicide in the, they would not be captured. They could not be captured. That was against the code of the Bushido. A lot of them were wounded, so they couldn't fight, so they just killed themselves. That was their mode at the time, and that had tremendously blocked the ley line. So what we did, as Mark and I went back up here back on Pilot Mountain, and we worked with a group now of 10 others. We sent out emails saying we need help on this date, on this time. We're going out there to clear this ley line. So there was a synchronized, organized effort to clear the ley line, especially here to Attu Island. And here I am setting up the grid with crystal grid here. You see this? North, south, east, and west. This rock split right here was lined up with the ley line. So it's just, you got it laid out right in front of you. So we did the clearing, and let me go back, hold on. There's one more we have to do. We did the clearing, and Mark could feel and see, I couldn't, he's clairvoyant. He could see way up in the distance, like doves flying up north. And I could feel, being more the clairsentient person, energy flowing again. There's this very basic low frequency telluric energy uniting a long lost union between the Atlantic and the Pacific. connecting back together again. It was really quite, I wouldn't say pleasant, but a satisfying type of energy. Oh, this really feels good. So we were meditating there, and what we found that if you follow that line further back, it turned again into darkness over here. This was all dark. I was given that vision, which means there was much more clearing to do. And that clearing turned out to be clearing all of the soldiers, Japanese soldiers who were killed back then in World War II, as well as the Americans, as well as all the nuclear detonations that went off in the Pacific after the war, testing atomic and hydrogen bombs, had left this sense of heavy darkness. This is a whole other healing in itself that took 4 months, 5 months of coordinated efforts with teams working together to help all of these soldiers cross over, as well as clearing the broken energy lines from the nuclear detonations. Which gets into the story of, in a way, how does a soul get trapped? Soul gets trapped in a way that, depending on what the mindset is of the person during their life and the method, how, if they die instantly or unknowingly, and probably some karmic reasons, other reasons, but I know those two are factors, prevents them from crossing over. They just get locked and they hold on. They hold on. Don't have the within them that sense to go over. Now you have that on a scale of a war where millions of souls are killed, go to Europe and the Nazi concentration camps and what have you. That's a big blockage. So there's always an ongoing effort by the earth clearing teams to go and clear battlefields, prison camps, it's war camps, death camps, to help these souls cross over primarily. So the energy is clear so the rest of us can cross over. Some of us, what I have found out through readings, our life mission is to do just that, to help souls cross over. So, they call it soul walkers or gatekeepers. And the 4 directions comes into play with a lot of that. And every team has its own technique to use. Okay, so the last one I want to get into here is North Carolina Civil War death camp, prisoner of war camp in Salisbury, North Carolina. Now, you're not going to read much about this. It's not a popular subject, but a lot of Union soldiers were imprisoned toward the end of the war. And the Confederacy at that time didn't have the wherewithal or the means to take care of them. So they just stockaded them in by the thousands, tens of thousands, and kept them in there. And most of them starved to death. There was disease. The home guard stood guard. Everybody tried to escape. They got shot. You know, it was really a bad place. So again, Mark and I, we had heard about this. So we drove out there and started doing our healing. This is what, if you ever go to it, it's a national cemetery now in Salisbury. Here you have unknown U.S. soldier. And here you have all of these tombstones with marked. All of these are unknown U.S. So they didn't know who these people were. These were all dead bodies that when the war was over, Sherman sent a cavalry regiment to find out about this. And they came across this scene of total horror and chaos. What had happened, all these prisoners were dying. So what the Confederacy did was just dig big trenches and throw the bodies in. So you can imagine all this stink and the rot that was coming up. Rampant with disease, rats, mice, very little food, all sorts of dying going on. And you can read this here on the monument. About 11,700 soldiers died between 1864 while held prisoner. It turned out to be that number was 6,000, but still in all, that's a significant amount. So Mark and I did this clearing, and this gets into where this is not a job for the faint of heart, because as soon as we started doing our clearing, all of this remorse, this pain, depression, abandonment, and especially longing for their loved ones. These soldiers who were trapped, a lot of them were married with children. They knew they weren't going to see their families anymore, their loved ones. And this, we could feel this energy coming in. It was overwhelmingly strong. So much so that we could not complete the healing. We were actually sat down, 2 grown men, we sat at the stairs over here. The monument broke out crying, just out of control. Very, very sad. So Mark's wife, Linnea, Mark's, who's also very proficient in this, they live in Mount Chester. said, she tuned into the energy and said, okay, you guys need to leave. You've started the work, I will finish it. And she did the rest of the healing remotely. And we got back on our motorcycles and just left. But what I'm getting at here is some of the times when you do this type of work, and I've experienced later on, you pick up the energy of the tragedy, of the trauma, and you try to get through it, but sometimes it's too intense, you can't. So it's always good when you go into one of these to have somebody behind you, backing you up in case you get into one of these situations. And we did get them all over to cross and clear that. But if you ever want driving through Salisbury, you can stop there. Okay, so ley lines in the solar system. We've been finding out, this is kind of unusual now, that either ley lines or grid systems now emanate from the Earth on up. We found this when I was clearing a farmhouse in Chatham County. That after we did the clearing in the farmhouse, walked outside and the dowsing rods are pointing straight up. Go, what is this? And we could feel that this is the energy is going up into outer space. And what I found out in subsequent research and what have you, that there is geometry within the solar system, and I want to show you that, as well as what this has to do with the ascension process. So here's a book called A Little Book of Coincidence in the Solar System by John Martineau. This is the dance of Mercury and the Earth. And it took me a while to figure this out, but I'm reading his instructions. This is the orbit of Mercury. And when Mercury goes in retrograde, everything seems to go backwards. But what Mercury's not going backwards. It's the perception of us as it's going through its orbit. We are behind it. We're spinning out here. That it seems to be as it gets ahead of us. And then as we catch up, it does this apparent loop or retrograde, and it goes back again. So this happens 3 times a year. So this was a map he did in a little bit over a year and a half, year and a quarter, that Mercury would go around, here it goes again, and it's in retrograde one more time, it goes around again, and it's in retrograde again. Meanwhile, the Earth is spinning around. Now, if you keep doing this, and he's did this for 7 years, this is after about 4 years, you see what's starting to develop here? This beautiful spiral geometry is starting to develop, and after 7 years, you have this beautifully well-balanced spiral art. And this is the dance of the planets that John Martineau calls. And it's like this for every planet. So in the book, there's the spiral between Earth and Venus, which is far more dramatic of this, and then between Mars and Jupiter and what have you. And you see all of these spirals that form geometrical patterns, which gave me the idea that there's more to the universe than just our solar system than just spinning around the sun. It's done in a certain orchestra. It's done in a symphonic way. And then recently in group meditations, I work with a group in California, a new form of entity was coming in, entities called star angels. And these star angels announced themselves that we are here to help reestablish and build new lines between the planet and the other planets and stars in the galaxy. Because as Gaia now is going through its ascension from the 4th dimension into the 5th, you need new energy grids need to be formed, new ley lines need to be formed within the solar system, and they are here to help us do that. And so we were working with them, and now there's still more to be done that had to be done on site, which we're getting indications it's got to be done out west. But anyway, so you've got this ley lines now, or grid system that's got evolving from the planet, from Gaia up into the other planets, as well into the other stars, as Gaia now becomes an elevated, or Mother Earth becomes an elevated member of the galactic community. It's a beautiful thing. And here we go, we're doing this. So I brought that to your attention to see that we are part of this whole system, that, we're part of a balanced solar system with the sun here and all the planets moving in this graceful orbit. It looks like we're just spinning around, but actually we're forming patterns as we do this. And these patterns are geometrical. And now we're also connecting to new life forms in the stars. So I'm bringing this to your attention because this may have some sort of relationship to astrology. Because if we are connected through these lines as a planet, say Mercury in this case, moves around, the energy of this line coming to Earth has got a different background. The background that goes to the zodiac could very well be sending that type of energy to us here on the planet through the ley line grid system. Perhaps, I don't know, but I thought it was significant or close to it. So I wanted to bring this up to you. All right, now that we're on that subject, let's now get into part 4 and the last part of the talk here about sacred geometry. And that's a geometry that symbolizes your connection to source, the golden heart center or 0 point. Now, there's all sorts of type of sacred geometry. It's a vast subject, you know, and I mentioned this before in the write-ups, that, you know, the Egyptian pyramids are built to a sacred geometry. The cathedrals in medieval Europe are built to certain sacred geometries and number systems and musical codes. Same in Asia, in Southeast Asia, in China, and Japan. There's all sorts of balance and harmony in geometrical patterns that are embedded within the buildings that they put up. The churches in Turkey, the old Roman Constantinople Empire churches were put up in beautiful patterns. The Muslim church temples are put up in the mosques are put up in beautiful geometrical patterns. So this geometry is prevalent in buildings. It's prevalent in art. There's a whole Melchizedek, not Melchizedek, the archangel type of architecture that goes on that's prevalent too. It's all over. But I have, and through my work and being a metal fabrication artist, have come up with a series of designs that are designed for personal use to help you in your progress to your higher self. So I want to start talking about that now. But first, I want to get into the significance of 4 and 12. This plays into not only the 4 direction, but in the geometry I'm going to go through, 12 is an important number. As you know, there's the 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 parts to a dozen, the 12 apostles in the Christian Bible. So this is from the secret book of John, which is part of the Gnostic Gospels that was discovered in a town in Israel or Syria, I forget, called Nag Hammadi. So this was hidden from everybody. Same time about the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, these were found in a different area, not far from there. And it gets into the secret book of John is where, you know, St. John wrote the book of Revelation, which is loaded with symbology. And this is a parallel to it because Jesus came to him in vision and told him how creation was made. And it gets into the numbers 4 and 12 because here you have the Trinity, you have the Mother, specifically the Mother, Father, God, with mind and wisdom creating the Son or the Christ consciousness. And the first thing the Christ consciousness did was create 4 lights. This is where the power of number 4 comes in. And each one of these lights, and here are their names, that's in this book, came out with 3 aspects of perfection here. So now this is the power of 12 in the very, very primal creations before man was even created or even a thought. This number system or the power of 12, base 12, was in the initial creations. So these are the possible root significance. I'm not saying this is it, but everything to me is pointing in that direction. Root significance of the source of 4 and 12. Now you can also go to the Revelations, book of Revelations, chapter 4, verse 6 to 8, and you will see this also. And you also start to get the sense of number 7, why 7 is important, because around the throne of God were not only the 4 beings, these 4 beings here, but there were 7 lights, 7 candles. And these are the 4 directions. These are the masters of the 4 directions, which are more than just directions. I say in that direction, but they're 4 portals or 4 gates into upper consciousness to lower consciousness. 4 and 12. So we're going to build on this when we go into geometry. So this piece of geometry here is called the Lotus of Life. And there are 12 basic petals. You see it? There are 12 petals. You count them. And this is the form of that builds on that power of 12. And these petals reproduce themselves again and again, keep going out. So there's actually 12 here, then there's 24, 48, 62, etc. Going out in that pattern, but you have to notice one thing: where do they all go out? Where do they all come from? They all come from the center. They come from the source. They all come from 0 point out. And that's significant because our energy flows from the center, heart center, out, both down and up. So if we can get a geometric design that emulates this type of pattern, we've got a way, a sort of mandala, a mandala that can be used that reflects going back to source, That all of these emanate from source and go back to source. There's none of them independent of source. And I'm going to build on this now. It's key that you understand this. This is the Lotus of Life. This is made out of steel rings, and I silver braids together. And I use steel because steel is primarily iron. And this is going back to the elemental kingdom. It's in honor of the iron divas. There are spirits who work just with iron and are tied to the human race big time. Because if you look at how much iron is used by the human race, it's significant. We build buildings out of steel. Steel is 98%, 99% iron, depending on the mixture. Stainless steel is 92%, what have you. But iron is used all over the place. You know, in your cars, ships, buildings, railroads, in the roads, in the rebar, reinforcing bars that put in roads. It is the key element that we use to build our civilization. And also, by the way, the key element that's inside of you, because your blood is made primarily of red corpuscles, which is iron. We need it to survive. So I stuck with iron. A little bit more difficult to work with, but it's an honor and cooperation with the iron elemental spirits that help the human race in numbers of 12. Okay, so here we have another one at a different color angle. Again, you see the progression of the first 12, but I want you to pick out that there's a sequence here of, we'll go to these, not only there's 12 here, but there's one going out. And this is a higher dimensional energy field. I'm going to show you how this works. These are like safe, I'm not sure, but the number I got was 5th dimensional energy patterns, that as they come down to the lower dimension through the 4th and 3rd where we are, they shift. Okay, but they all go back to source. And as they shift, they start to form different patterns. But first here is a friend of mine is also, we have a group of us geometric artists who hang out together. This is one in mosaics, and here's 12 again, but in different patterns. See the pattern starting to shift? And this is all done in mosaics. Okay, and this is done by Evelyn Cruz, and I have everybody's website later on if you want to go deeper into this. The shifting patterns, I want you to look at this. See, this is again, the Lotus of Life in 12, but in there, you see how this outline, now this is done by my friend Van Dorn Hinnett, who is also a geometric artist. You see this one here, how this comes out. This is specific pattern of just 6, which is now the higher dimension moving into the lower dimension. Again, higher and lower doesn't mean like who's better and who's worse, it's just a different frequency. So you go from a frequency of 12 now, and it's going down into a pattern of 6. And this particular pattern that you see embedded in the Lotus of Life, it's called the Seed of Life. And here you have it here. So if you go back to see how he outlined this, you see it here? And now this is it standing alone and standalone, but here's the 6 petals. And of course, now if you look out here, you got 6 more, but these are bigger. That's a replica or a shadow of the master 12 petal Lotus of Life. But this is the Seed of Life. It's called the Seed of Life. There's 7 rings here. And the center ring is used to help focus it into the center here. And there's 7 days of creation, and then there's 7 in the book of Revelations. So now we've gone from base 12 to base 7. This is important because this is the Seed of Life and everything. Now we're into Metatronic, that was the word I was looking for, Archangel Metatron geometry. We're into Metatronic geometry, which is the basic, is the Seed of Life. And from there we go into the Flower of Life. So here you see now, this is another piece I work with. Here you have the Seed of Life, bingo, right in the center. And now it starts to grow out. So from this point, 0 point, it goes out to another 0 point, and it forms another seed of life, and another seed of life, and another seed of life. You see it goes around in this daisy chain? So, but they all go back to source. Every center goes back to source. It's a replica of going back, all right? Now, if we go further out, this is called the fruit of life. We have a massive growing of all of these seeds of life into the flower of life, and out it goes. Now, this is a beautiful drawing, and Van Dorn, who did this, told me that when he did this, a woman who saw it had an instantaneous healing from this, the glory of this, and there's other patterns developing in here. So this is called the growth of the flower of life into the fruit of life. And it's just a magnificent drawing. But in some circles, it's also called the daisy of death, because there's a double-edged sword here. As you progress out into various things, and if you don't go back to source, this can be a trap in karma, a trap in reincarnation. And this is another point, is a shadow side of this type of architecture, this type of geometry. Not saying that it exists, but it's a possibility. Okay, so this is again, third or fourth dimensional energy pattern. It's totally beautiful. It's got a high value to it, but you got to keep it remembering, I've got to go back to source. It goes back to source. It's source reproducing itself constantly over and over. And you have to stay with that. Otherwise you get stuck going the wrong way. Beautiful work. Okay, so I wanted to get into this number 7 here again with the seed of life, because 7 now has branched into a new sort of geometry called a Chester Hedron, designed by artist Frank Chester. This is a piece I made. It's 9 feet high, and they come in different sizes. I can make, but this is an interdimensional portal. This particular design is made of 3 equilateral triangles, 4 equilateral triangles that all meet in the point. So here's triangle 1, triangle 2, triangle 3, triangle 4, and they all meet up to a point. And in this particular kite shape, the area is the same as this triangle. So it's 7 equal sides of equal area, which is unheard of before. Frank Chester figured it out on how to do this with its particular angles. Very difficult to make. This is a very powerful, strong energy antenna that brings in higher energies. And I have had, some people have got these in their yards, and they call them interdimensional portals. The energy that comes out of these is quite prevalent. And how we measure the energy is through what's called the Hawkins Scale of what is the energy value, the spiritual value of a particular geometric design. So you can, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but you may want to study this and bring it up. David Hawkins in the book, Power versus Force. All right, here are the energy values. You can see getting pretty low here. You've got all of this negative, bad type of darker energy, but it gets into, once you get over 350 into the 400 range, you are into an enlightenment area as it goes all the way up. So we measure with dowsing rods or intuition, what is the spiritual value of a particular piece of sacred geometry. So right here you have it. So for example, the seed of life is 450. The flower of life is 450. And that gets into what's called high reason, into the state of love. Pretty strong energy, pretty strong energy. I look at this, and remember, the number is just a reference point of what you feel when you see this is important and how it affects you. So one number being higher than another doesn't mean it's necessarily a stronger one. Maybe it's not for you. You may not want something that's high because you're not ready for it yet. You have to evolve to it. So, and the fruit of life is 400, which is pure reason. So these are strong, significant spiritual energies, antennas, if you would, that emanate these powers on the Hawkins scale. Now, besides the scale, we also know how far out does it go. So, for example, depending on the size, now size is important here. This depending on the size can go anywhere from 12 to 20 feet. This could go as far as 25 to 30 feet. It's like this also. So you you put one of these in a room, you may have not only this higher frequency, but the distance it travels out. Okay, so now when you get into the higher dimensional, what I think the higher dimensional is, the Lotus of Life, and here's a sketch. These are available from Van Dorn, by the way. I'll show you his website. And these are in the 1,000 range. It's a pure enlightenment, anywhere from 800 to 1,000, depending on the size and what have you. But they're high in the scale of, and into what the Hawkins rates as enlightenment. Okay. And their range, again, depending on the size of them, will range anywhere from 25 to 50 feet, which can do a whole house. I mean, so I'm bringing this to your attention, know that these antennas exist, this type of geometry exists. This is not the only type, but this is the one that I kind of specialize and work with for the last couple of years. And it's sacred geometry that you can take with you and has a meaning for you. Not that the others don't. The cathedrals are beautiful, the pyramids are beautiful. The mosques are fantastic, but they're out there. This is closer to you. Finally, the Chester Hedron again is in the 1,000, and depending on the size of it, it depends on how far they go out. So this 9 foot high, I've built a couple of these so far, and they go out 1,000 feet in each direction. So 2,000, this is over a quarter of a mile, sometimes a half a mile worth of energy radiating out from these. Okay, and these smaller ones, 16 inches high, they go out about 30 to 40 feet. Now I've had this verified by other thousands, because I may be a little bit biased, and so I'm making these things. So I've asked other thousands to come in and say, could you find out what the energy signature of these are? And they come out with similar. I mean, a couple of feet here and there, but they come out with similar responses. Same thing with ley lines, and I bring other thousands out to find ley lines. They find them too. And I don't tell them where they are. They just kind of say, whoa, something's out here. I can tell by particular dowsing, whether using pendulums or tuning forks, etc. So I always try to verify this, get me out of the equation. Okay, so there you have it. Whoops, I lost my, what is going on here? Let's go to the next slide. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. Here is, now we're talking about enlightenment. Here is a Chester Hedron, one of the first ones I built. It's in a site in Alamance. My friend Dobbs and Judith have it in their yard. Lit up at nighttime. So that's enlightenment for you. There you go, just to prove the fact. Okay, quite a work of art. And they do the meditations around it and ceremony and what have you. And it's said, this is set up particularly in the 4 directions. The other ones I've made are set up in the balance out, north, south, east, and west. All right, so suggested readings, highly recommend the Gaia Matrix by Peter Champeau. Definitely learned a lot from Peter and his definite work, and talks about all the different spots in North America and their energy values. A good primer to get into. I also recommend all of these, the Nature, Spirits, and Elemental Beings by Marco Belgianek. You want to get, this is the book, okay? You notice other books here about ley lines and earth energies, and dowsing, if you want to get into dowsing with the pendulum dowsing. David Cowan, as you can see, is author in both of these, along with his Arena and Chris Arnold, and other books. My friend Thirsting, Linnea has written this one, Thirsting for Joy. It's going to be available in another 3 months or so. And then there's this book, Power versus Force by David Hawkins. Sacred Geometry. What I recommend here, besides, if you want to get this book, I used to show the orbits, World Mandalas. To get into sacred geometry and really understand what it's all, to feel it personal, if you get this book on mandalas, because these are all the different religions, spiritual movements, what have you, and start drawing, you start to pick up that energy and relating to it. It's an excellent way to get into sacred geometry personally. Just get yourself a bunch of good coloring pencils, sit down and go for it. I do it too. I mean, I can make them, but I find this a lot of fun and very relaxing. All right, so just a quick reference to Van Dorn Hinnett and his lightweavings.com. He had done these. He's a tremendous art. He's got sculptures, geometric sculptures all around the state. you can, he has these available. Evelyn Cruz at this site does great mosaics. Her and I have worked together on using sacred geometry and mosaics. We have a permanent display in Saxapaha. And then feel free to contact me for these, all made out of metal, put together, silver brazed, sometimes welded. And visit our websites for a collection of our art and how their availability is, etc. And of course, there's the Chester Hedron, and different sizes are available. So thank you. Thank you for watching. This has been wonderful. I have a tendency to ramble on at times, and I apologize for that. But this has been a very fruitful and rewarding career for me in the last 21 years. And I give thanks to my family for supporting this. I've 3 wonderful married children with 6 grandchildren, and I have occasionally time to talk to them about this. They do listen. So, and I hope it's been enlightening and joyful for you also. Let's keep in touch. Take care. God bless.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for staying with us for that wonderful talk. That was a pre-recorded talk that Joseph did. So this is kind of the April Fool's joke. It may have looked live, but it wasn't. But we are going to have him join us. He's on now, I believe, and I'll get him on. So I'm going to open up the chat box now for the Q&A. I find this subject fascinating, and I hope y'all really enjoyed it too, because you don't hear, it's hard to find someone who knows about all that. So, so let me open the chat box for everyone. Just give me 1 second here. All right, it should be open for chats. We're going to keep everybody muted, and let me find Joseph, and I will let him.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Joseph. Let me find you. There he is. Okay. Joseph is on vacation with his family. So there we go. Here we are. Yay, technology. It works.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, so let's see the gallery view here. So if y'all have questions for him, please put them in the chat box, and I'm going to read them for him because he's with his family right now.
Who are sitting in an RV with 4 adults, 2 teenage girls, and 2 dogs. So I'm sitting in my car where it's quiet. I can talk to you.
Okay, so they're starting to come in. That was a really great talk. I've heard it a couple of times now, but I just hung on to every word, even that time too. So, okay, so oh, okay, they're really coming in. Everybody has his email. Let's see, Carl wants to know, can you say more about the soul remnants? He said, I had an experience of this. A remnant of my own past life was cleared by someone, and the energy shot out into me and changed my life. Shot out of me, maybe, changed his life. So soul remnants, you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, from what I know, a soul can be trapped 100% or 10%, the remnant or a small portion is there still held back because of certain trauma conditions. And the main soul goes over and some of it still stays back, and that part that stays back can have some intelligence to it. And if you happen to be nearby to it, you'll pick that up. So there are techniques to clear that. We clear it the same way using the full clearing a full soul. we use, in this case, would use the 4 direction ceremony, or you can just go within if possible and do some inner child work, get that part of the soul, that remnant, and embrace it and love it like it's a lost child, your inner child, and tell her you understand it, and you will take over from now, and feel it being taken up, and bring it up into the light, into your heart center and into the light, and wish it well, and joining into your, melded into your higher self, who wants to bring it back. Nobody's left behind. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Carl's shaking his head yes. Okay. So Catherine is saying, thank you so much for that wonderful talk, Joseph. Nancy wants to know, do you live in Saxe-Bahá because of the energy there?
That's a loaded question. Yes. Yeah, I live just outside of Saxe-Bahá, about a mile or 2 away, but that whole energy, there's a master ley line that runs from Mount Shasta to Mount Jefferson, which is in Virginia, into Pilot Mountain, and runs through Saxe-Bahá. So, yeah. I lived in Raleigh, and when I was looking for a place to live, move out, and I saw Saxe-Bahá, I said, I'm moving there. I don't care where it is, I'm just going there. So boom, a month later, I was living there. So yes.
Okay, great. So how can you find the World Mandalas book? Who put it together?
I forget the woman's name, but it is, I did check, it is available on Amazon.
Okay, and I do want to say, if anyone, if I may, Joseph, if anyone has questions that they just can't find something, or that you're welcome to email him, and also he's going to hopefully have a class if we have enough people interested to learn how to do all this. It's really a fun hands-on workshop if you want to come. So let's see. Do we send these questions to everyone? Yes, Chuck, you can send it to everyone. Carl, again, are you aware of Tanis Hallowell and her book Summer with the Leprechauns? He says it's amazing.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. Okay. And that brings up a good point about the levels of the elemental kingdom. You know, the operating levels, the spirits and all of them who are at the bottom end of the manifestation, actually make it happen, can be friendly or distant at time, because they are in an evolutionary stage. You know, there's devolution coming down and evolution going up. So most of the, and I hate to use the word lower level, but the 4th and up to 3rd dimension workers in the elemental kingdom are flipping from devolution to evolution. So they're kind of like ready to go up the scale, and they can be very helpful. But ideally, you should work with the 5th and 6th dimensional divas, D-E-V-A-S, who are in the evolution and going up the scale like we are. The human race has devolved, evolution, and we are in the form of going up, evolution. So hope that helps. But thanks for that book, and I will definitely look it up.
Summer with the Leprechauns. So are you saying that leprechauns and what you're saying, that they're not on the level that would be most beneficial for us, or to work with?
Some of the lower level, and I hate that lower levels, meaning lower 4th dimensional elemental kingdoms, can be caught up in that negative or duality energy. So you may get some good information, or you may not get good information, as with people. So the higher, the better. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Paula says, have you had negative physical experiences associated with vortices? She said, I developed heart palpitations after being at Bell Rock in Sedona 7 years ago. I went to a cardiologist who prescribed meds, didn't want to take them, and had acupuncture that dissipated the palpitations. I am fearful now of vortices. I live in Asheville and have heard there are vortices around here true or not, but question mark, true.
True.
So,
Yeah, negative vortices or discordant vortices I have encountered when I was working in Central America can really send you off your rocker. My experience was vertigo, and it was not a pleasant experience. Matter of fact, everyone in the team who walked into that particular area felt that vertigo, and we had to form a ring holding hands to balance it. And the four light workers, it was four light workers, we still couldn't balance it. And we asked our driver, our chaperone, to come over and help us, and she did. And immediately she just had the right energy in the five, and boom, it went from a discordant, somewhat vertigo type of vortice into one of calm and relaxation. So they do exist. I have experience in them, not to the degree of where it was permanently physical like that, where you had to get acupuncture, but yes, they do exist. And the idea is to flip them around to go to the other way, to put harmony back into them.
Okay. Robin asks, have you done any work in Virginia, east of Richmond, lots of old battlefields and Native American sites?
I have not worked there, but friends of mine have, and they went to the Battle of Antietam Creek, which is actually in Maryland, by the way, to Sharpsburg, and spent days with thousands of Union and Confederate soldiers lining up to get blessed to cross over. But if I am led to go to those places, I will. You see, that's a good question. There's a lot of teams out there, and a hierarchy in the higher realms knows what team works best at what place. So we go where we're led to, if that makes any sense. So I could go to a place, make a clearing, and just do layers 1 and 2, where another team will go out more adept to clear up layers 3 and 4. So it's very well run. Good management.
Yeah, good management. Okay, that's a picture of him when he was, do you say 18? You're
20.
20,
Yeah.
Getting your pilot's license. Yeah, he has a very interesting, has had a history in life. We didn't go into all that much, but anyway. So Charles, Chuck Rich is asking, you said that the counter-rotating vortices create portals. What uses this portal and for what purpose? Is this portal a thought form created by vortices? Like what, these portals, what are they used
What are they for? Okay, so there are, these telluric energies within the earth that move around. And the best analogy I could use are dust devils that sometimes, so use the analogy of a dust devil, which is a mini tornado, and much milder, by the way, and fun to look at. And those are caused by atmospheric energies. Okay, the vortices are from within the earth type telluric energies that would cause that to happen. Sometimes they're out of balance based on some human conditions that happen, or out of balance because of deeper earth energies that are in conflict. And then sometimes they're in balance and they're just wonderful to be with. I think, did that help answer the question?
I think so. And he also asks, is the portal a thought form created by vortices? But I think you're saying it's the earth, and it's more magnetic field as well.
Yeah, magnetic, not so much where you can read it with a compass, but magnetic, meaning it's it's polarity energy. And as a thought form, it doesn't have a consciousness, but could be caused by an elemental spirit. That is maybe that, that coalescence of dark energy from anger and arrogance, what have you, that gets together and starts to coalesce into an entity. Sometimes that could cause a vortex. So in that form, yes, it can be formed by a thought, a collective thought patterns can cause a negative vortice. Yes.
Okay, good to know. And as you said in your talk, on the other hand, a group of people getting together to pray and send out positive thoughts together can
Yes.
counteract things like that. That was a great.
Yeah.
Thank you for
For,
saying.
thank you. For the highest good. Yes.
Yeah. Susan says, do you have any comments about what is taking place underground with the rescue of trafficked children and the destruction of the deep underground military bases on Gaia's energy?
I wish I could answer that, but I have heard about these places, but right now working with them is kind of like above my pay grade. So
Okay.
maybe in the future. Yeah.
Okay. But of course, negative things will have influence, but yeah.
Mhm.
So Michael Harp, she's asking, is it true that ley lines were also known as dragon lines? And she says, I work with dragon energy, and together we clear soul fragments and inner child aspects, which sounds so similar to what you described when clearing the earth energy.
I have used that. I have heard that term, dragon lines, and I can say an unqualified yes to respond to her. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. Chuck is asking again, I believe that you said that spirits of the earth control the streams and rivers, I assume. Why would streams not be controlled by the spirits of water?
It could be a duet where the earth spirits would create the valleys or furrows where the water could flow. And depending on the importance and size of the water, body of water, would determine the level of water spirit that's there. I worked with the water spirit once, just amazing. I gotta tell you, in a lake in Florida. And just go really quick, the lake, my son had an apartment overlooking the lake. He had lived there for 3 months. And he said, there's an alligator that lives in the lake, but no one's ever seen it. They hear it flap its tail at night, but they know it's there because they could hear it. So anyway, I did a service for the lake spirit. I saved the crayfish and brought it back. And I heard her say, thank you for saving one of my own. And I responded to her, I said, you're welcome, but hey, to make sure I'm not nuts and I'm really hearing you and you are the lake spirit, can you make that alligator appear right off my son's apartment where there was a palm tree at the bottom of his balcony? Just so I know that we're in cahoots here and I'm not making this up in my head. So I went upstairs and within 5 minutes, sure than heck, up pops the alligator exactly right off the palm tree off underneath my son's balcony. And my son said, you've been here for like an hour and you see this alligator. I've been here for 3 months. People have been here for years. I've never seen it. Well, what did you do? Well, top secret, can't tell you. But yeah, that was
Yeah, you can't make that stuff up, can you?
No, communicating with the water, the spirit of the water. So yeah, Chuck, they exist.
That's good. He also says, where is all earth energy generated? Is it in the center? Is it also mixed with energy coming out from the earth?
Both. Yeah, remember that chart I showed you? The Gaia force itself is in the first dimension. The energies coming off are in the second dimension, into the third that we feel indirectly, and all the way up into the fourth. So it's a multi-dimensional energy system, ready to go to the fifth.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here to help that.
We have so many more questions and we're almost out of time. Have you identified the sacred geometry created by all of the planets in our solar system?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's on the list of things to do. And you got to thank John Martineau for his work in doing that. And that was a flat pattern drawing showing that beautiful geometry. But in essence, don't forget, we're moving around the sun and the sun is moving around the galactic center. So that's actually a spiral. So you would have a spiral DNA type of design, which makes it even more intricate. But to me, the two-dimensional was just perfect.
Okay, so let's see. You were talking about dark and light coalesced energy. Some believe that we have created God, so to speak. So it could be that we have created the devil or gods or goddesses. Not really sure about that question, but
Yeah, I think in not creating God, but in sending out spiritual God-like energy. You know, God, that's a tricky one, you know, as far as God being an entity, or, you know, God within all of us, you know, panentheism, God in creation, creation within God. So I would say, in thought forms, to go back, would not make devil energies, but negative or energies that would have an anger or dualistic approach toward the demonic side or evil side. Yes, as but not, and coalescing into an energy with some consciousness, but very basic level consciousness of what do I do? I just attack because I'm angry. The positive or loving energy is a higher consciousness and is more of the spiritual loving kind. So that would have the attributes of the creator or the God within us, if that helps any, but not the creator itself or the devil itself
that
or
sounds like
demonic.
sounds like a whole workshop just on that one subject.
Oh yeah, yeah. But these are all excellent questions. They're all excellent. This is good.
They are.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you everybody for joining us, and Joseph for coming in for the Q&A. Really appreciate y'all joining us, and we hope you'll join us next month. Dr. Larry Burke is going to be talking about his newer experiences that he wants to share with everybody to make your life better. And Joseph was sharing with the sacred geometry, the actual items. I had him make something for me, and the kids on my street, all of it, they kind of want to come into my house now. I mean, they want to come they want to come in my house. And before they were just, you know, kind of flippant about it, but now they're just like, can I come in? And I'm thinking it might be this energy, they're just drawn to it. So anyway, it's fun. Email Joseph, please, if you want more information, or go to his website. It will be in the archived events on Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship website. We have board positions. We'd love for you to help us. We also have a marketing coordinator we'd like to work with if someone has some marketing expertise. Secretary and program coordinator, we'd love to talk to you if you have interest in being on our board. It's all virtual now. But anyway, so let me know. You can contact me. Let's see. I think that's it for now, but I always want to end this with saying thank you again, especially the new folks who've come. And remember to live in faith, not fear, and to count your blessings every day. That just makes your life a little bit better, even if things aren't going so well. So anyway, thank you everybody for coming, and I hope to see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.